going on? What you're looking at here is Biden's plan to get cheap Russian oil. That's right. He's figured out a plan. Now, Finland and Sweden is right next to Russia. They're basically all connected land. But they're independent. Finland is its own place. See, right here is like, this little area around here is like where NATO is. Over here, the North Atlantic Treaty. So, Sweden and Finland are going to both apply to formally be added to NATO. Now, if that's the case, so now the oil, the Russian oil that they would get from Rotterdam will now be coming from Sweden and Finland, which would definitely piss off Russia, and you're going to have another big problem over here. That's Biden's plan, to try to reduce the actual cost of what we have going on right now, is to use that ploy. So this is why he's spending billions of dollars in Ukraine, because he realized they got him about nooks and crannies, because realistically, we have no more oil. And when you have no more oil, what do? You go steal it. Or you buy it. So we stole from the Saudis, borrowed, and now look where we are. Saudi oil is good. We've been using Saudi oil for a while, but it's that Russian crude oil. That good old Russian crude. That stuff that's been sitting around, ain't been used. Got hundreds and hundreds of years worth. Well, that's why we went over to Kuwait. And that's why we're basically over there now, doing those politics and different things that they're doing there, politicking it. No, we have oil in reserve. They reserved for certain people. Now, when they mean for everyone else in the world, oil for them, yeah, it's very low. Biden will be a one-term president. Absolutely. Well, when you see the things turn around the way that they are, and the wheels started going and it's cooking, and everybody's like, oh, okay, I see it now. I see what's going on. Well, you got to ask yourself, what is it that you don't, well, you got to look at what do you want out of the situation? I mean, how does it affect you? Well, they don't have any plan for hate crimes for against us. No plans in place for us, so you basically fending for self. So you got to learn how to make your way in a figure eight because they do not care. Listen, they don't care. This is going on now. This is going on right now.
Act and actually ordering the use of Defense Department aircraft to import formula from overseas. ABC News senior national policy correspondent Ann Flaherty joining me now for more on this. So Ann, Democratic Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro actually grilled the FDA commissioner during this hearing earlier this morning. Let's take a listen.
The fact is that the FDA food safety is not a priority. Dr. Carroll, have you read the whistleblower report?
I have, yes. I have looked at it, yes.
Okay. Let me just add, what was the allegation that concerned you the most?
I'd say the most concerning, let me just point out that in my career, I've frequently been in the position of being the person in charge when whistleblower complaints are raised in an organization. The most concerning charge is that the integrity of the organization was compromised.
So now you're saying they're talking about the actual shortage now. Yeah, now they're talking about the shortage and for the baby formulas. When has baby formula been a problem and a shortage all of a sudden? Oh, they know that's going to get your attention. Now, if women were breastfeeding, this wouldn't be a problem. But for those who are not, that's scary when you can't feed your child.
Allegations, and of course it took 4 more months for the FDA to really get in there, find the bacteria, and then shut it down. And this was after 4 children had already become seriously ill. Of course, Abbott says there is no conclusive evidence that those illnesses were caused by their formula, and the FDA says it's ongoing. This is a frustrating issue for everyone because you have a slow government bureaucracy, you have a market that's controlled by 4 companies. And really the question becomes, at what point will the FDA really allow a permanent easing of imports, allowing these European companies to sell into the US and create more competition here? America doesn't like that. We like our Made in USA, but that is one of the questions that we have. Of course, if you only have 13 people investigating infant formula safety at the FDA, the question becomes then how can you ensure that formula coming from overseas is safe for these families?
Right, it just seems like a risk all the way around. So what's the real timeline here that we could actually see formula back on the store shelves?
So, Biden, as you mentioned, has this plan to fly in. He wants to use Defense Department commercial aircraft, plus these contracts that the government has with commercial airlines to fly in formula from overseas. I do think we need to point out that European countries, many of them have more stringent guidance than the United States for some of their formulas. I don't know that there is a serious risk there. He says he's going to fly it in, and that could still take weeks. So we're still looking at weeks before Americans are going to see shelves fully stocked.
And it's going to continue to be a tough time indeed. Ann Flaherty, thank you so much.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here.
Yep. Well, that's when people were getting electric cars. It's going to be chaos. Without gas, there's no heat. There's nothing to go around.
When you get back to your desk, you'll have a statement by the department about the next tranche of presidential drawdown authority.
This guy is so lost.
$100 million. This was in pre-existing authorities that we already.
All they're doing is keep paying Ukraine.
In that package, there will be 18 155 millimeter howitzers, 18 tactical vehicles to tow those howitzers, and 18 artillery tubes. Basically, is our equivalent of a battalion, an artillery battalion, and 3 AN/TPQ-36 counter artillery radars. This is the same counter artillery radar system that we talked about before that have been provided to Ukraine, and then some ancillary field equipment and spare parts. And that brings to a close the pre-existing authorities that we had and draw down $100 million. That stuff will start to flow very, very soon. I cannot give you an exact date of when it's all going to show up in Ukraine, but you can imagine, having seen us do this in the past, that we're not going to sit on our hands. We'll start flowing that stuff immediately. And these are all items that we have provided in the past. So there's a process in place for that. So there's that. That means that we have now committed approximately $4.6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since the beginning of this administration, and that includes approximately $3.9 billion just since the beginning of Russia's invasion on the 24th of February. So basically $4 billion just since the beginning of the invasion. And since 2014,
He sounds proud of that.
Overall, the United States has committed more than $6.6 billion in security assistance. And then obviously we're going to continue to work with allies and partners to continue to provide additional capabilities. I think you know that. Okay, on to the news last night about support for the baby formula crisis here in the country. U.S. Transportation Command is expeditiously coordinating across federal agencies to include the Departments of Agriculture and Health and Human Services and the Food and Drug Administration to support the President's direction to conduct Operation Fly Formula. U.S. Transportation Command will leverage its partnership with commercial air carriers to contract and accelerate the importation of infant formula into the United States that meets our government's health and safety standards. Now, we're in this active coordination right now. I do not have a specific flight to speak to today or exact quantities to speak to today. We are in active coordination with the interagency. We've got our marching orders, and we'll work through this. The first step of that is, again, working with the interagency to identify locations where formula can be had overseas, and then getting the right
People are going to be out there slinging baby formula.
to bring that to
I got that baby formula. Got that new Enfamil, that iron and
We
calories.
are in the very early stages of working through this. We all share the same sense of urgency, and we will participate and cooperate to the best of our ability, but I just don't have specific aircraft information to give you today.
Of course you don't.
As I think you know, today the Secretary is hosting his Spanish counterpart, Spanish Minister of Defense Margarita Robles, to the Pentagon. We'll have a readout of that meeting later today. That meeting's ongoing. This morning, I think you also know, the Secretary shared a working breakfast with Israeli Defense Minister Benjamin Benny Gantz. The two leaders who know each other quite well discussed the administration's
Similac chow, driving me wild, Similac chow.
stabilizing actions throughout the region. Secretary commended Minister Gantz on Israel's deepening relationships with countries across the region and the increasing opportunities for military-to-military cooperation that are enabled by Israel's transition into the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility. Quick update out of Southcom this week. From the 16th all the way through today, the U.S. Southern Command has been hosting U.S. chiefs of mission and senior policymakers from the Western Hemisphere for a conference to discuss support to U.S. foreign policy and diplomatic efforts in South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And those discussions, we are told, have gone very, very well. And then lastly, just on schedule again, the Secretary will be taking some time later this afternoon to meet with the members of the Suicide Prevention Independent Review Committee and as they kick off their deliberations. So he's very much looking forward to that. That'll be very soon this afternoon, and this thing died on me. Okay, with that, Ben Fox, questions. Perfect timing for that, by the way. It's good. Ben.
Hi. Yeah, with respect to NATO, what types of things would the U.S. be willing to do in order to help provide security assurances to Finland and Sweden, particularly during the time before any formal approval of NATO membership? Would that, for example, include increased troop rotations into the countries?
Yeah, I'm not going to get ahead of where we are in staff level discussions with Sweden and Finland. We've said before, these are two militaries we know very well. We've operated with them in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kosovo. We exercise with them routinely. And we are actively now talking to them about what kind of security assurances they might need or welcome. And we'll work our way through that at that level. But I don't have anything specific to speak to in terms of actual deliverables on that. When we have more to say on it and when we can talk about it, we certainly will. In the room, yeah, in the back there.
I'm wondering if you can tell us at all, with the newly passed bill that's expected to be signed, what types of equipment will you be sending first in those launches?
So, as you know, there's a good chunk of this new supplemental that will go to Presidential Drawdown Authority, and the Congress added some additional money to that. So it's we asked for $5 billion. I'll get you in a second. Let me answer the question, then we'll go. That way you're just not going to exhaust your arm holding it up there, because my answers can be quite long. So those additional funding that'll go to Presidential Drawdown Authority, we are in constant communication with the Ukrainians about what they need on an almost daily basis. So we already have some thoughts about future systems and material that'll go. I don't want to get ahead of the decisions yet, because I mean there's a process here that has to play out in terms of what we propose to the Ukrainians, the back and forth we have with them, and then what ultimately the president authorizes. But I can tell you this. That just like you saw with the $100 million we just signed out today, the kinds of things that will go forward will be relevant to Ukraine and to the fight that they're in, understanding that over time that fight's going to change. So the future drawdown packages will probably, at least in terms of frequency, look a lot like what we've done in the past. I mean, we now have some longer runway. And so we're going to meter these out appropriately so that Ukraine's getting what it needs in the fight that they're in, and that fight could change over time. So I don't want to get ahead of where we are. I don't want to speculate about future specific systems. But go ahead.
With the fight in the Donbass going on right
It
now.
is not out of the realm of the possible at all that there'll be future artillery systems in there. But again, I don't want to speculate or get ahead of where we are. Artillery clearly has proven to be a critical element for the Ukrainians in this fight. We said that when the war was going to now go into the Donbass, that it was a fight that was going to be heavily reliant on long-range fires, artillery, and we've seen that bear out. We know that the vast majority of the missiles that we have sent, just the ones we have sent, are actually on the front lines in various places in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are using them and using
Don't
them,
forget to hit the like button, y'all.
So, as you said, we just sent another 18, or we're going to send another 18 here soon. It's entirely possible that artillery could be in future drawdown packages, but we'll work that through. And just like we've done it in the past, we'll be as transparent with you when we can. When we have made these decisions, we'll certainly make that public.
John, you started.
No, he had his hand up first, and he waited a long time.
Okay, when you finish, the thought, you started with statement saying, we had asked for $5 billion, then you got off.
The original request was $5 billion, and Congress added some additional funds to this. I don't have the exact figure, but they added some additional PDA authority.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
John from Al Jazeera English. I wanted to ask you about the working breakfast between the Secretary of Defense and Benny Gantz. The readout didn't mention anything about the killing of Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Obviously, there is a lot of condemnation that's come from US lawmakers with regards to the killing of the journalist. It is highly likely that she was killed using an American weapon, considering the weapon used by the Israeli military. Was this discussed between the two during the meeting? And if indeed there was some sort of an investigation that established that US weapon was used to kill an American journalist, will there be any reprimand or sanctioning from the US with regards to this?
What I can tell you is the subject did come up in the breakfast, and the Secretary welcomed Israel's clear statement of intent to investigate this. He welcomed that. Hey,
said they will not be actually, they came out today saying they will not investigate it. They refuse to.
The government of Israel, it's not for the Israeli military. I believe it's in their Ministry of Interior, and they have stated a clear intent to investigate, and the Secretary welcomed that investigation. And obviously, we look forward to seeing what the investigation finds out. But I'm not going to get ahead of it or speculate about what the outcomes might be one way or the other.
But do you not think that there is a bit of room for concern, considering it is Israel that is accused of killing the journalist? And if it was another country, let's say, that killed an American journalist, maybe the US wouldn't be so welcoming to allowing for that country to investigate itself. Let's say it was Iran or another country.
I appreciate the chance, the opportunity here to get me to speculate about investigations that haven't been started for events that haven't happened yet. We welcome the fact that there will be an investigation. We've made clear we want to see this investigation be thorough and transparent and complete. But I also don't think it serves anybody's purpose to get ahead of it when it's ongoing and it hasn't concluded. So let's see what the investigation comes back and what it says. But it did come up in the conversation. Yes, ma'am.
John, Tima from Al Jazeera English. Just to follow up on Jamal's question, would you support an independent investigation?
I think we've already said we welcome the fact that the Israeli government has indicated a willingness to investigate this, and I'm not going to get ahead of the process where we are. Travis.
Thanks, John. I had a few questions about the baby formula flights. I just wanted to clarify, you said Transcom is going to be working with commercial partners. Does that mean there won't be any military aircraft involved? These are going to be contracted commercial carriers?
We believe at this point that probably the most expeditious and quite frankly the most cost-efficient way to support this immediate need would be through commercial contract carriers. Transcom does not believe they have to activate the CRAF. At this point, they believe they can probably handle this, again, most efficiently with contract carriers that are already in the the orbit of carriers that they work with every single day. And they do. I mean, so much of the security assistance that goes to Ukraine, for instance, is going on contract carriers, not great tails. That said, Travis, if a requirement can best be met by a gray tail, Transcom will certainly have the authority to use a gray tail. But they believe right now, probably the best and most efficient way to do this is with contract carriers. We'll see. We just don't have a lot of detail right now. We're working it out closely with HHS.
You talked earlier in the week, I think, about the stocks in U.S. and overseas commissaries. I think 50% you said in U.S. and 70% overseas.
Right.
Do you have any update on those numbers, whether the stocks have dwindled? And are military families somewhere on this priority list? Are there discussions whether some of this formula from overseas might be going to commissaries?
I did check on the numbers. Those numbers are still relevant. 50% stockage levels here at home in our commissaries, and 70% overseas. And the Defense Commissary Agency continues to evaluate this against the need every single day. I know of no changes to those policies or priorities. Obviously, we're not immune to the same shortages that the rest of the American people are experienced with respect to baby formula. We take the President's direction very, very seriously, and we'll work this as hard as we can. Yeah, Barbara.
For example,
is the first time you called this a baby formula crisis. You used the word crisis, not a word the Pentagon uses lightly. So can you tell us a little bit more about, how the Secretary is getting information on this? Has he appointed, is there any kind of working group? Is there any kind of watch group? Has he asked somebody to take charge in the building of making sure he's getting the information he needs on this? What has led you to the conclusion to use the word crisis?
I think it's evident, Barbara, that there's a significant shortage out there in the American population of baby formula, and the president has taken this very, very seriously. That's why he called for use of the Defense Production Act and asked for DoD to support HHS and agriculture in terms of finding inventories overseas that we can bring home. I think I was simply stating the obvious, which I think we've all recognized, that it's an issue out there in the American population, and the Department of Defense will do everything we can to help alleviate that. There has not been an establishment of a group here at the Pentagon to manage this. U.S. Transportation Command is going to be our lead agency for working with the interagency to find these inventories and to try to get them here to the United States.
On a different subject, earlier today, a senior defense official talking about the situation at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv said right now there's no U.S. military security component to their embassy security needs. So that is broader, no military security component broader than just U.S. Marine Embassy contingent. If you, and I fully understand it comes at the request of the State Department, but nonetheless, if there's no U.S. military security component to the embassy's security needs, are you not concerned? I don't know how to put it, other than you could have a repeat of the kind, not exactly, but the kind of tragedy that we've seen so many years ago in Benghazi, where some of the State Department didn't feel security was required, military security was brought in late because they weren't asked to be there. Do you just wait for the State Department, or do you at some point take a more assertive role and say, we have assessed and we think you need security? Or do you think no security is needed by anything other than State Department personnel?
I would say we work very closely with the State Department about their security requirements. And those security requirements are not the same in any two places around the planet. So we are in direct conversations and coordination with our State Department colleagues about their security footprint there at the embassy in Kyiv. And I don't have anything to announce today with any changes to how that's going to be done in the future. We're in constant communication with them, and I don't think that it would be helpful for me at all in any way from the podium to talk about what that security footprint looks like, what the postures looks like, and how the security requirements are going to get filled. And I would certainly refer you to the State Department to speak to their decision-making process in terms of how they better secure diplomacy and their diplomats. If there is a validated need for U.S. military assistance, then again, that's a discussion that we will absolutely have with the State Department. I mean, we obviously want our diplomats to be able to do their jobs, and we're glad to see that they've resumed operations in Kyiv. We agree with them that that's an important move. And if there's something that the U.S. Department of Defense can do to assist them in their diplomatic work, then we'll have that conversation with them.
So you're being very, just to be clear, you're being very prospective, shall we say, in looking down the road. You are repeatedly saying you will have that conversation if there's a need. We
are having that conversation with the State Department about what their security requirements might look like. But it's ultimately up to the Secretary of State to determine there or anywhere else around the world how he wants to better secure and protect his diplomats. And And if there's a role that we can play, then we will absolutely have that discussion with them. But I'm not going to get ahead of where things are right now, and I am certainly not going to talk here from the podium about security footprint at that or any other embassy. I think you can understand we wouldn't want to go there. Yes, Zero.
Thank you. John, as you know, Afghanistan people's situation gets worse every day. Women's situation, you know, Taliban pushed them, forced them to wear burqa, shadari, and the other side, Aqani, a week ago said we are close friend with America, we are not enemy. American is not our enemy. If it's not enemy, although I asked this question from the State Department, if you have a good relationship with America, then why they don't open the school for women in Afghanistan? And the other side, as I read the report for the Pentagon yesterday, Pentagon concerned about Daesh also, and $7 billion value equipment of the United States left behind in Afghanistan. This is complicated. What do you think? And the second question,
what's your first question?
The first question is about
what do I think about what?
Daesh. Pentagon is concerned.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. Last time I was at the podium. I mean, we've been nothing but clear and consistent that we don't want to see a return of ISIS, particularly ISIS-K inside Afghanistan. I mean, they're already there, but I mean, growth in their capabilities such that it would threaten our interests. And we're watching this as closely as we can.
About Al-Qaeda?
Same thing.
Okay. Do you accept Afghani's friendship? Taliban say we are a friend for the United States. We are not enemy.
I'll tell you what we won't accept is another threat to the homeland that emanates from Afghanistan, and that's why we're going to stay focused on making sure we have an over-the-horizon counterterrorism capability to deal with that.
And also there is rumor that the United States want to establish military base in Pakistan. Is it true?
I'm not going to. I don't know any. I have no updates in terms of military basing in the region. We are talking to regional partners about possibilities to help us improve our over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities, but I don't have any updates for you or anything specific to talk about. Yeah, in the back.
Hi, this is Susana from the Spanish News Agency. Thank you. Going back to the NATO summit, I would like to know, I wonder if you would be able to give more details about what's being cooked. Because
what's being cooked?
Yes, before the summit, because they are talking about a new strategic concept that it's going to be set during this summit. So what does this mean? And also my second question is, will the US be willing to send troops to Sweden or Finland if they ask them for, or if they ask them
Here we go.
So I think Secretary General Stoltenberg has talked quite a bit about the NATO's new strategic concept. I'd point you back to comments that he has made. I know that they will clearly in June in Madrid want to talk about the future of the alliance and how the alliance needs to continue to evolve and transform for the security environment that has actually changed in Europe. Clearly it has. And NATO is now more relevant than ever. And I know that without speaking for the Secretary General, he's eager to have that discussion with allies in June. I won't get ahead of that discussion. We are very much looking forward to participating in that. On Sweden and Finland, I think I'd go back to what I said before. We are in conversations with both countries now that they have both applied, but they have not yet assessed. We're having staff level conversations with both militaries about any potential security assurances and or capabilities that they might appreciate having availability to in this time between application and accession. And we just haven't, those discussions are ongoing, and we just haven't come to any final conclusions about that. But I would just again make 2 points. One, we certainly strongly support their accession into the alliance. And as I said before, these are two militaries we know very well, and we're confident that should there be specific assurances or capabilities that they need that we can provide, we'll be able to do that. We just haven't completed those conversations right now, so I really don't have anything specific to talk to at this point. Yeah, back there.
Thanks, John. I was going to ask two questions, but one on Finland and Sweden. You heard from Moscow many times that it would be a scorched earth if they were to join NATO. Is the Pentagon worried that this may be the last straw that pushes Putin over the edge and head to a world war?
I can't possibly get inside Mr. Putin's head to determine what he will or won't do. I mean, he did make comments earlier this week that he was not overly concerned. I don't have the exact words, but the impression he left was that their accession into NATO itself wasn't a matter for great concern to Russia. But I'll let Mr. Putin speak for himself in terms of how he intends to react to this. I would just remind, and it's important to keep reminding this, NATO is a defensive alliance. It does not pose an offensive threat to any other nation, and never has. That's not the purpose of it. It's a defensive alliance. And again, we welcome Sweden and Finland's application. The United States looks forward to working with them through the accession process. We're confident, and you heard the Secretary say this yesterday in his meeting with the Swedish Defense Minister, that they will be nothing but additive capability to NATO's defensive capabilities, because they are very modern and very capable military. So we welcome their eventual